Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today, we're going to be talking about building a full funnel paid media strategy that actually works. I'm Casey Anderson. I'm the paid media director at 2 Octobers, and I've built and implemented some of these strategies before. I've used traditional funnels, and what we're going to talk about today is the more realistic funnel. We'll also discuss what funnel centric paid media approaches are and how they are limited, and how we can rethink audiences and needs. And I'll also discuss a full funnel success story that we've had here at 2 Octobers. So you've probably seen this before. This is the traditional marketing funnel. This funnel starts with awareness building and works its way down to action. With this funnel, we presume that there's a clear start and end point for the buyer journey. You've probably also heard the terms top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel in discussing the traditional media funnel. Tofu, mofu, and bofu are other ways that we talk about it. And with this type of marketing funnel, we think about how we want to organize our spend. So, with a little bit of the budget at the top of the funnel for discovery, awareness, targeting a cold audience, and the type of messaging that's often used there is introductory and content centric. When you work down to the middle of the funnel, where we presume everyone who's gone through the awareness phase is next, this is where people are expressing interest. They're doing a bit more research. They're starting to make some decisions based on the research that they have come across. And the target audience here is also still relatively cold at this point in time. It's getting a little bit more spend, so they're able to get a little bit more information that they're looking for from the advertising. But the advertising that is going out to them, that they are being met with, is usually persona based and gated offers, gated content that allows them to engage in a type of way where they might be submitting leads to read something. They're not yet talking to someone or making a purchase. And then at the bottom of the funnel, there's a better chunk of the spend down there usually, where we know that the people that are in this point of their customer journey or their buyer journey are more valuable, and we expect deeper conversions from them. But that may be a purchase, that may be a demo that they're looking to get. So we offer these specific things for them, the product or service offer, and a chance to actually talk to someone behind the business or a sales team member. This is a warm audience, and that's usually why we consider them more valuable. What we know about this type of funnel is that the customer journey is actually not a perfect funnel at all. In fact, a more realistic marketing funnel has our prospects entering and exiting and coming in at different touch points constantly. So there's no real way, unless they tell you where they're at in their customer journey, to know exactly where they're at. They may have seen the product from an ad, done some of the research, and then forgotten all about it and come back in from the top again. They're going from tofu to bofu, back to mofu, or tofu to mofu, or mofu to tofu all the time. There's no clear direction for the funnel with the customer journey. So with a more realistic funnel, we assume that there is probably a way out of this, that there's a way to make sure that you can use the basics of the funnel, but make it work for you. So, reasons to move beyond the paid media organized around the traditional funnel can be when your customer journeys start to look like that spiral that I showed you before, start to look like there's no real rhyme or reason for how they're entering the buyer journey. It's also when you see competitors advertise more and more in channels that you haven't even considered. And also, when you've reached the limit of who you can attract with low funnel tactics, and yet you still need to scale. So, a lot of times this happens with search where you're putting a lot of your budget towards that singular channel. Um, and it's been successful up until a certain point, but then it sort of dies out. You're drying up all of these bottom funnel acquisitions. So, combining those tactics, combining the basics of that marketing funnel and tofu, mofu, bofu tactics with that more realistic customer behavior can pave the way for a well rounded funnel strategy. Some of the things to think about when you are creating this well rounded funnel strategy that considers how customer buying actually works is who is in or out of the funnel at any given time. So we talked about cold audiences and warm audiences. Who are these audiences? What do they look like? How will I know which one's which? Well, with cold audiences, we like to think of those as account lists, maybe ones that haven't been touched. They're ones that we want to have contact with, but haven't up until now. So these are target audiences that are still cold, not ones that we've talked to before. Interest targets are another one. So the ones where we kind of choose what they might think affinity wise that would relate to our brand. And then professional demographics, a lot of times on cold audiences that are still relatively in market. With warm audiences, these are people we assume have heard of or had some sort of touch point with either our brand or product, or a product similar to ours. The warm audiences are based on remarketing lists, third-party intent, and event-based actions that have happened on the website. And that brings us to what these different types of audiences should see. And this is the funnel starts to get a little bit crazy, how we can approach these in any point in the funnel with the right content for them. So with your cold audiences, educational content that's need focused, understanding what they might want or are looking for, but trying to get in touch with them for a really easy way in. So a lot of SEO content can be like this with lists trying to assume that we have an answer because we're the experts. Social proof is great for cold audiences, awareness messaging, and visuals. With warm audiences, educational content that is slightly different from that need based content, but that's solution oriented. We're solving a problem for the person in question. Social proof is also a part of this, and competitive messaging. Remember, those warm audiences might already know something about your competitors, but they want to find out what's different about you. So, being able to position your brand and your solution that you offer is very important for that warm audience to differentiate you. And then sales CTAs, making sure they know what they're going to get at the other side of this transaction or engagement. And you can see here the overlap is part of how we're going to communicate that with them, right? There's an overlap between both of these audiences, so it can be simplified how we put this content out there and how we message what we're trying to deliver to them. Beyond that, building a funnel strategy that really works can be largely based on strategic placements. So, with placements that cater to the top of the funnel, we're bringing awareness to your audiences. This is display, it's video, it's demand gen in Google, which hits both of those pieces. It's CTV, which allows people to get really good imagery of what you are providing and what solutions you're offering, and it's social media. So all of these can be good places to start for building that awareness. And then when we think of the mid and bottom funnel placements, we want to spark interest and engagement. We want people to get to know us a little bit better. And that can be done through social media, it can be done through search, it can be done through Performance Max and email marketing. So, to summarize everything, we know that the funnel itself is not linear. It's it's not going to look like that perfect chart that was described at the very beginning. We're moving away from that now and starting to think more about messaging, more about placements and targeting. All of this is going to prevent limitations when it comes to meeting prospects where they're at in their journey. It also opens up new avenues to drive better results in your paid media. Okay, so a full funnel strategy in action. We've built several of these full funnel strategies, but we've had one that really has done a lot for this client. We wanted to present because it's been a long time coming that we've worked on building this full funnel and making sure these placements were right for the client and showed great results. So, the problem that we were looking at with our insurance client is that they had a high monthly budget. And for a while, that was doing really well for them. So, after some time of using just paid search placements and YouTube conversion bidding and display remarketing, all of these warmer audiences started to see a slowdown in their bottom funnel conversions. And most of that came from their search campaigns, where we really depended on search to get those conversions. What all of this ended up doing was causing above target CPAs. So the cost per acquisition was higher than we wanted it to be. And the volume of the conversions that were coming in were much lower than we expected. And they were also starting to see more competition in the channels that we were using. So that caused a lot of struggle when it came to their overall goals for the business. And the solution that we came up with was kind of a slow rollout of what ended up being a more dynamic full funnel strategy. The place where we started was in Google, and we began to expand their visibility in Performance Max. Performance Max has placements within display, YouTube, Gmail, and also Google Discover. So, and search as well. So, all of these working together allowed them to get more visibility where they weren't prior to this. And it was allowing them to use some content in a more top funnel approach. That ended up having good results to start off with. We were seeing slightly lower CPAs. We were seeing a little bit more traction coming in month over month from the Performance Max campaigns, where we were able to segment them in a way that made sense for who we knew their audiences were, whether it was families or seniors, for instance. After that, we started developing a testing budget for awareness. And we decided to use 2% of the overall budget. So 2% of that monthly budget went to testing in new placements. Some of those new placements and channels included demand gen. Demand gen is very video heavy in Google Ads. It was a brand new campaign type at the time when we started testing it. So it allowed us to use a lot of the video that they had available. It also allowed us to use carousel imagery to tell more of a story. And storytelling is great when you're working from people who might just be getting to know your brand. Meta was another place where we took what we knew from how things had performed in Google search and applied that to Meta for a top funnel approach. We knew which messaging was working with different audiences. We wanted to capture those audiences in Meta with brand new messaging that they had probably not seen before. And then once we could capture them in Meta, we and got them to the website, they would then be able to become part of this spiral looking funnel and eventually turn into apps. That was the hope. The segmentation was really important. Families, individuals, seniors were the primary focuses for how we messaged and who we were trying to target. The outcome, we allowed about 6 months of testing for this full funnel approach. It can take some time to get the funnel working the way you are intending it to work, with a lot of optimizations and considerations. But after about 6 months of testing, we saw that conversions in low funnel placements started to improve. So that meant that we were getting a decreased CPA in Google search, along with growth in the acquisition that we were seeing in Google search. So more of those conversions that actually turned into ROI for them. Since starting this strategy, we've seen the cost per acquisition drop by 20% in Google Ads. So we're also seeing the conversions increase 47% year over year. That means that the customer acquisition for this past year was actually at a record high during a slower period where they've in the past seen a lot of seasonality and a slowdown. The reverse happened. Currently, we are on target to beat our total 2025 purchases by over 15% with this strategy. So we're very pleased with how this outcome has helped the client in their overall marketing and their overall business. And we're going to keep at it and see where else we can add to this funnel strategy.